Kinsley Davis had never been this far from civilization. The remote jungle valley in the uncharted wilderness of the Darien Gap was supposed to be uninhabited, but intelligence had been wrong before. This lawless stretch between continents, where no government claimed authority and no maps showed accurate details, was perfect for covert operations and perfect for ambushes. As a diplomatic courier carrying classified documents to a covert meeting point, she'd expected a routine extraction. Instead, she found herself crouched behind a fallen tree with an empty sidearm while hostile fighters closed in from 3 directions. That's when Chief Petty Officer Marcus Kane dropped from the canopy above her, blood streaming from a shoulder wound, and pressed his Barrett M107 into her trembling hands. "You know how to use this," he gasped. Kinsley looked at the .50 caliber sniper rifle and felt muscle memory from a life she'd left behind flooding back. The Darien Gap stretched across 60 miles of impenetrable jungle between Panama and Colombia, a green hell where the Pan-American highway simply ended and civilization gave way to one of the most dangerous wilderness areas on Earth. No government controlled this territory, no laws applied here, and no rescue would come if things went wrong. Kinsley Davis, 31 years old, had been working as a diplomatic courier for the State Department for 4 years, carrying sensitive documents between embassies and clandestine meeting points across Central and South America. What her credentials didn't mention was that before becoming a diplomatic courier, Kinsley had been Staff Sergeant Kinsley Morrison, 82nd Airborne Division, with 3 combat deployments and specialized training in long-range reconnaissance and precision marksmanship. For 4 years, the arrangement had worked perfectly. Kinsley carried documents through dangerous regions without incident, using her military training to avoid trouble rather than engage it. This mission had seemed routine when she'd received her briefing in Panama City 3 days earlier. Intelligence indicated that a high-value defector from a Colombian cartel wanted to provide information about drug trafficking routes in exchange for protection. The meeting point was a GPS coordinate in the Darien Gap, chosen because it was far from any government presence. Kinsley's role was straightforward: carry the defector's intelligence package to a secure communication point, then escort him to extraction. Simple courier work in a remote location. The first warning came when her satellite communicator lost signal 20 miles into the gap. The second was tracks near the meeting point, boot prints from at least 8 individuals moving in tactical formations. The third came when Kinsley reached the coordinates and found her contact hanging from a tree, tortured and killed with professional interrogation techniques. Kinsley was photographing the scene when the first shots rang out. The ambush had been carefully planned and professionally executed. Hostile fighters emerged from concealed positions in 3 directions, cutting off escape routes while maintaining coordinated fields of fire. They moved with the discipline and equipment of trained soldiers, not chaotic cartel enforcers. Kinsley's diplomatic training emphasized evasion, but the tactical situation left no choice except fight or die. She drew her Glock 19 with 3 spare magazines and began engaging targets while moving toward the only available cover, a cluster of fallen trees. Her military training took over immediately. 4 years of civilian life hadn't erased combat muscle memory, and Kinsley found herself automatically calculating ranges, identifying priority targets, and managing ammunition with precision that had kept her alive through multiple deployments. But she was outnumbered 4 to 1, and her attackers carried automatic weapons that could suppress her position while others maneuvered for killing shots. The firefight lasted 18 minutes and consumed all her primary ammunition. She was down to her final magazine when she realized her attackers weren't trying to kill her immediately. They were herding her toward capture. Kinsley made the tactical decision to break cover and attempt escape rather than be taken prisoner. She sprinted toward the tree line, hoping to reach denser jungle. For 30 seconds, it looked like the gamble might work. Then she ran directly into the 4th element of the ambush. The final engagement was brief and decisive. Kinsley eliminated 2 attackers with her remaining ammunition, but the third wounded her left shoulder with automatic rifle fire. She found cover behind a massive fallen tree, but her situation was hopeless. No ammunition, no communication, and hostile forces closing in from all directions. That's when Chief Petty Officer Marcus Kane literally dropped into her life. Kane fell from the jungle canopy like an avenging angel, landing 10 feet from Kinsley's position with fluid grace. He was bleeding from multiple wounds, his equipment was damaged, and his left arm hung useless from a dislocated shoulder. But his eyes were alert and focused, and the Barrett M107.50 caliber sniper rifle in his right hand looked maintained with religious devotion. "You know how to use this?" he gasped, pressing the massive weapon toward Kinsley's hands. Kinsley looked at the Barrett and felt 4 years of civilian life evaporating. The rifle weighed 28 pounds and fired rounds that could penetrate armored vehicles at ranges exceeding a mile. It was identical to the weapon she'd qualified expert on during her final military assignment. "Staff Sergeant Kinsley Morrison, 82nd Airborne," she replied, accepting the rifle and automatically checking its condition. "What's the tactical situation?" Kane's expression shifted from desperate hope to professional recognition. "Chief Petty Officer Marcus Kane, SEAL Team 6. My team's been tracking arms dealers through the Gap for 2 weeks. Hit an ambush 5 clicks north, lost 3 men to IEDS, been running interdiction on hostile forces." He gestured toward the jungle where approaching footsteps grew louder. 20-plus hostiles with military-grade equipment and professional training. They're not cartel. Too disciplined, too well-equipped. Someone with serious resources wants whatever you're carrying. Kinsley processed this while familiarizing herself with Kane's Barrett. The rifle was equipped with a loopholed Mark IV scope, bipod legs, and a sound suppressor. More importantly, it was loaded with .50 caliber match-grade ammunition designed for precision shooting at extreme ranges. "How many rounds?" she asked. 8 in the magazine, plus 2 spare mags," Kane replied. 24 shots to clear approximately 20 targets. You're going to need to make every round count. The approaching hostile forces were less than 100 meters away, moving through the jungle with systematic thoroughness. Kinsley could hear them communicating in Spanish and Arabic, coordinating their advance with tactical discipline. "What happened to your team?" Kinsley asked while positioning the Barrett on its bipod and scanning for targets. Kane's expression darkened. "Intelligence failure. We were tracking weapons shipments from a Syrian arms dealer who's been supplying groups throughout Central America. Thought we were hitting a storage facility. Turned out to be a meeting between the dealer and his clients, including individuals with connections to international terrorist organizations." He paused to scan for movement. The arms dealer was Abdullah Hassan, former Syrian military officer, selling advanced weapons to anyone with sufficient funding. His clients included representatives from criminal organizations and advanced scouts for terrorist operations. Kinsley found her first target through the Barrett scope, a fighter in tactical gear moving through underbrush approximately 150 meters away. The man carried a Russian-manufactured automatic rifle and communicated through military-style radio. Professional equipment, professional movement, professional discipline. "What kind of advanced weapons?" she asked while tracking the target's movement. "Syrian army surplus including anti-aircraft missiles, armor-piercing ammunition, and what intelligence suggests might be chemical weapons components," Kane replied grimly. "Hassan's operation isn't just about profit. He's actively working to destabilize governments by supplying the most dangerous weapons to the most dangerous people." Kinsley squeezed the Barrett's trigger and watched through the scope as her target simply ceased to exist. The .50 caliber round struck center mass with devastating effect. Around the impact area, other hostile fighters immediately began seeking cover and shouting warnings. "Outstanding shot," Kane observed. "Hassan's people know they're dealing with a precision shooter now. That'll change their tactics." But Kinsley was already acquiring her second target, another fighter attempting to establish a firing position behind insufficient cover. The Barrett's scope made targets visible at ranges where they couldn't even see her muzzle flash, giving her significant tactical advantage as long as ammunition lasted. The second shot eliminated a fighter attempting to flank their position. The third took out what appeared to be a team leader coordinating the assault through radio communications. Each shot reduced the hostile force's capability while demonstrating their quarry was far more dangerous than anticipated. "Where's the extraction point?" Kinsley asked while searching for her fourth target. Kane checked a GPS device that had survived his ordeal. 12 kilometers southeast, near a river crossing where we can signal for helicopter pickup. Problem is, Hassan's people have vehicles positioned to intercept anyone moving toward known extraction routes. Kinsley found her fourth target and fired, watching another professionally equipped fighter disappear. "Then we'll have to make our own route." What followed was a running battle through some of the most challenging terrain on Earth. The Darien Gap's jungle was a maze of rivers, ravines, swamps, and mountainous ridges that could conceal an army or swallow travelers without trace. Kane's wounds were slowing him down, but his tactical knowledge made him invaluable for life-or-death decision-making. Despite his injuries, he maintained professional focus and situational awareness that had made him one of the Navy's most elite warriors. Kinsley discovered that 4 years of civilian life hadn't diminished her combat skills. The Barrett felt natural in her hands. Her tactical movement through hostile terrain was instinctive, and her ability to read enemy patterns was as sharp as during active military service. More importantly, she found that the hesitation and moral uncertainty that had driven her from military service weren't factors here. The hostile forces pursuing them were professional killers working for arms dealers who supplied weapons to terrorists and cartels. There were no gray areas, no ambiguous intelligence, no possibility of collateral damage to innocents. Over the next 6 hours, Kinsley systematically eliminated 12 more hostile fighters while she and Kane moved through jungle toward their extraction point. Each engagement was different. Some required precision shots at extreme range. Others involved close-quarters combat where the Barrett's massive rounds could penetrate cover that would have protected targets from smaller weapons. The weapon's effectiveness was devastating, but so was its signature. Every shot announced their location to hostile forces within miles, requiring immediate movement to avoid counterattack. The Barrett wasn't a weapon for sustained defensive positions. It was a tool for eliminating specific threats and then disappearing. As they moved deeper into the gap, Kane shared more details about the operation. Hassan's been building a network spanning from Syria to Mexico, supplying advanced weapons to anyone willing to pay. Our intelligence suggests he's planning something significant, possibly coordinated attacks on American targets. Kinsley paused their movement to scan for threats. What kind of attacks? Unknown, but the variety of clients suggests multiple simultaneous operations across different regions. Cartel violence in Mexico, terrorist attacks in Colombia, possibly something on American soil involving weapons he's been smuggling through Central America. They were interrupted by helicopter rotors in the distance, not their extraction, but hostile aircraft searching for their position. Hassan's organization was more capable than American intelligence had anticipated. "We need to reach extraction before they flood this area with more personnel," Kane said. "How many rounds remaining?" Kinsley checked her ammunition. 6 in current magazine, plus 1 spare, 18 rounds total. Kane nodded grimly. "Extraction point is 3 kilometers ahead, but intelligence suggests at least 15 hostile fighters positioned between us and pickup." The final approach to extraction required crossing open ground that offered excellent fields of fire for defenders but minimal cover for attackers. It was exactly the tactical challenge that separated professional soldiers from weekend warriors. Kinsley positioned herself on a ridge overlooking the extraction zone and began systematic elimination of defensive positions. The Barrett's scope revealed hostile fighters concealed behind trees, rocks, and improvised fortifications invisible to conventional reconnaissance. One by one, she removed them from the tactical equation. Kane coordinated their advance, using his tactical radio to communicate with the extraction helicopter while providing security. Despite his wounds, he maintained professional competence that had made him one of the military's most elite operators. The extraction helicopter was a modified Black Hawk operated by a crew specializing in high-risk recovery operations. They arrived precisely on schedule, dropping into the pickup zone with aggressive precision that spoke to extensive experience. As they lifted off from the Darien Gap, Kinsley looked down at the jungle that had nearly become their grave. Somewhere in that green maze, Abdullah Hassan and his remaining followers were regrouping. The weapons they'd been distributing were still in circulation, still threatening American lives. But Hassan's operation had been significantly disrupted, his personnel depleted, and American intelligence now had detailed information about his network. The mission hadn't eliminated the threat, but it had reduced it and provided foundation for future operations. During the flight back, Kane approached Kinsley with an expression mixing professional respect with genuine curiosity. "What's a former 82nd Airborne sergeant doing working as a diplomatic courier?" Kinsley looked at him for a long moment. "Trying to find ways to serve my country that don't require me to kill people." Kane nodded with understanding. "And how's that working out?" Kinsley glanced at the Barrett that had saved both their lives, then at the jungle where 18 hostile fighters would never threaten anyone again. "I'm beginning to think that some threats can only be handled one way." 3 weeks later, Kinsley found herself in a secure briefing room at CIA headquarters in Langley, facing officials who wanted to understand what had happened in the Darien Gap and whether the experience had changed her perspective. The debriefing lasted 8 hours and covered everything from her tactical decisions to her assessment of Hassan's organization. Kinsley's performance had impressed everyone who'd reviewed the after-action reports. "Your marksmanship with the Barrett was extraordinary," observed Colonel Sarah Mitchell, a special operations liaison. "Chief Kane's report indicates you eliminated 18 targets with 24 rounds fired, all under combat conditions that would challenge experienced snipers." Kinsley nodded. "My father was a Marine sniper who served 3 tours in Vietnam. He started teaching me precision shooting when I was 12, long before I considered military service. The Army built on that foundation." "And yet you left active duty to become a diplomatic courier," Mitchell continued. "Your service record shows exemplary performance and recommendations for specialized assignments most soldiers would consider career-defining. What changed?" The question Kinsley had been dreading arrived. "There was a mission in Afghanistan where intelligence failures led to civilian casualties. Children died because of targeting decisions I supported. I realized I wasn't psychologically prepared to continue making those kinds of choices." Mitchell's expression showed genuine understanding. "And yet in the Darien Gap, when innocent lives were threatened and American national security was at stake, you didn't hesitate to engage hostile forces." "The situation was different," Kinsley replied. "Clear threats, no ambiguous intelligence, no possibility of collateral damage to innocents. Hassan's people were professional killers working for arms dealers who supplied terrorists. The choice was simple." "Which brings us to our next question," said Agent David Torres, a CIA operational planner. "Your performance has attracted attention from several organizations. Are you interested in returning to more active operational roles?" Kinsley had expected this offer. "What kind of operational roles?" "Specialized courier assignments requiring someone who can handle both diplomatic and tactical challenges," Torres explained. "Locations where regular diplomatic personnel would be ineffective, but where your combination of credentials and capabilities could make the difference." Mitchell leaned forward. "The Darien Gap wasn't isolated. Hassan's weapons trafficking network spans multiple countries and involves clients who pose direct threats to American interests. Disrupting these networks requires personnel who can operate where conventional approaches aren't sufficient." Torres added, "Your diplomatic credentials provide access and legal protection that military personnel can't match, while your combat training allows you to handle situations that would overwhelm regular diplomatic staff." Kinsley considered the offer. For 4 years, she'd been content with routine assignments that allowed her to serve without facing moral complexities that had driven her from military service. But the Darien Gap had reminded her that some threats could only be handled through direct action. "I'll need operational autonomy and mission selection authority," she said finally. I won't take assignments involving ambiguous intelligence or high probability of civilian casualties. Understood, Mitchell replied. The missions involve clear threats to American national security, usually in remote locations where civilian presence is minimal. Your role would be to assess situations, eliminate specific threats, and extract intelligence that conventional personnel couldn't obtain. 6 months later, Kinsley found herself carrying a modified diplomatic pouch through Pakistan's mountains, ostensibly delivering routine communications to the American consulate in Karachi. What the pouch actually contained was surveillance equipment for monitoring a suspected terrorist training facility. Her cover was perfect, just another diplomatic courier making routine deliveries. But hidden in her luggage was a disassembled Barrett M107 and sufficient ammunition to handle any tactical challenges that might arise. Kinsley's new role represented balance between her desire to serve her country and her need to avoid moral ambiguities that had driven her from active military service. She was no longer a soldier, but she wasn't just a courier either. She was something new, a diplomatic operative with tactical capabilities who could handle situations requiring both legal authority and lethal force. The missions came regularly. Arms dealers in Somalia, drug cartel leaders in Peru, terrorist facilitators in Syria. Each assignment was different, but all shared common elements: clear threats to American interests, remote locations where conventional approaches wouldn't work, and the need for someone who could operate with both diplomatic immunity and sniper precision. Kinsley discovered that her new role satisfied both sides of her identity. She was serving her country in ways that made a real difference, but she was doing it by eliminating specific threats rather than supporting broad military operations that might produce ambiguous outcomes. Most importantly, she was preventing attacks rather than responding to them, saving innocent lives by eliminating threats before they could be realized. The arms dealers she neutralized couldn't supply weapons to terrorists. The cartel leaders she eliminated couldn't coordinate attacks on American targets. 2 years into her new career, Kinsley received an assignment that brought her full circle. Abdullah Hassan had survived their encounter in the Darien Gap and was attempting to rebuild his weapons trafficking network using new routes through Central America. The mission briefing took place in the same secure room at Langley. Hassan learned from what happened in the Gap, Mitchell explained. His new operation is more compartmentalized, uses different routes, and employs enhanced security protocols. But intelligence suggests he's planning coordinated attacks on multiple American targets. Torres added, "We've identified his current location as a remote facility in Guatemala's mountains, heavily defended by professional security personnel. Conventional military operations would require significant resources and risk substantial casualties." "What are the mission parameters?" Kinsley asked. "Single target elimination," Mitchell replied. "Hassan specifically, along with any intelligence materials about his planned operations. Secondary objectives include disrupting weapon stockpiles and eliminating key personnel." 3 weeks later, Kinsley found herself moving through Guatemalan mountains carrying a diplomat pouch containing a disassembled Barrett M107 that would decide whether Hassan's network continued threatening American lives. Hassan had chosen his location well, a former mining operation on a mountain ridge, providing excellent observation while offering multiple escape routes. The facility was defended by at least 40 professional security personnel with military-grade weapons. But Hassan had made one crucial mistake. He'd assumed any threat would come from conventional military forces using standard assault tactics. His defenses were oriented toward preventing large-scale attacks rather than stopping a single precision shooter operating from extreme range. Kinsley spent 18 hours conducting reconnaissance and identifying the perfect shooting position, a ridgeline 1,200 meters from Hassan's facility that provided clear sight lines while remaining outside effective range of his security force's weapons. The shot that killed Abdullah Hassan was fired at 0347 hours from a position that made return fire impossible and escape virtually guaranteed. The 50 caliber round traveled more than 3/4 of a mile in less than 2 seconds, striking Hassan as he emerged from his facility's main building. The helicopter pickup occurred exactly on schedule at a remote landing zone that Hassan's forces never managed to locate. As they lifted off from Guatemala, Kinsley looked down at the mountains where one of the world's most dangerous arms dealers would never again threaten American lives. The debriefing at Langley was brief and focused. Hassan was dead. His weapons stockpiles had been destroyed by secondary explosions triggered by Kinsley's follow-up shots, and intelligence materials recovered had provided details about planned attacks that could now be prevented. "Outstanding mission performance," Colonel Mitchell observed. "Hassan's network is completely disrupted, and the intelligence we've recovered will allow us to roll up his remaining associates throughout Central America." Kinsley nodded, feeling satisfaction from completing a mission with clear objectives and measurable results. "What's next?" Mitchell smiled. "There's always another Hassan, another arms dealer, another terrorist facilitator who thinks remote locations and professional security can protect them from American resolve." The assignment that would define Kinsley's career came 18 months after Hassan's elimination. Intelligence had identified Viktor Kozlov, a former Russian Spetsnaz operator who'd gone rogue and was selling advanced military technologies to the highest bidders. His clients included North Korean agents seeking missile guidance systems, Iranian operatives acquiring drone technology, and Chinese intelligence officers purchasing classified American military specifications. Kozlov operated from a fortified compound in the Siberian wilderness, 200 kilometers from the nearest settlement and protected by a private army of former Special Forces personnel from various countries. His operation was too remote for conventional military strikes and too well defended for standard intelligence operations, but diplomatic channels provided an opportunity that conventional approaches couldn't match. Kinsley's cover was a cultural attaché delivering artifacts to a museum in Yakutsk, providing legitimate reasons for travel to remote Siberian locations. Hidden within the diplomatic containers marked as archaeological specimens was her disassembled Barrett M107, modified with cold weather components that would function reliably in temperatures approaching -40 degrees Celsius. The approach to Kozlov's compound required 5 days of movement through terrain that made the Darien Gap seem hospitable. Siberian wilderness in winter was the environment where equipment failure meant death within hours, where navigation errors could lead to wandering in circles until hypothermia claimed its victims, and where a single mistake could leave no trace for searchers to find. Kinsley's military training had included Arctic warfare, but theoretical knowledge and actual survival in one of Earth's most unforgiving environments were vastly different challenges. Every step required careful planning, every piece of equipment had to function perfectly, and every decision carried potentially fatal consequences. The compound itself was a masterpiece of defensive engineering. Kozlov had used his military background to create a facility that could withstand conventional assault, while providing multiple escape routes through tunnels that led to hidden bunkers scattered throughout the surrounding forest. Motion sensors, thermal imaging, and automated defensive systems created overlapping fields of detection that would identify intruders long before they could approach striking distance. But Kozlov's defensive planning had the same flaw as Hassan's. It was designed to prevent conventional military assault rather than precision elimination from extreme range. His security protocols focused on preventing infiltration rather than stopping a single shooter operating from distances that exceeded the effective range of his defensive weapons. Kinsley spent 3 days in sub-zero temperatures conducting reconnaissance and identifying the perfect shooting position. The location she selected was a rocky outcropping 1,800 meters from Kozlov's compound, providing clear sight lines while remaining outside the detection range of his security systems. At that distance, even trained observers with military-grade optics would have difficulty detecting muzzle flash or determining the shooter's exact position. The environmental challenges were unlike anything Kinsley had faced previously. The extreme cold affected everything from battery life in her equipment to the ballistic characteristics of her ammunition. Wind patterns in the Siberian mountains created unpredictable air currents that could deflect even .50 caliber rounds at extended ranges. Most challenging of all, the target window was limited to brief periods when Kozlov emerged from his heavily protected facility. The shot that eliminated Viktor Kozlov was fired at 1,847 meters in conditions that would have challenged the world's most experienced military snipers. The .50 caliber round traveled for more than 2 seconds through air currents that required precise compensation, striking Kozlov as he inspected defensive positions that he believed made him untouchable. Kinsley's extraction from the Siberian compound required 8 days of movement through wilderness, where search teams equipped with helicopters and thermal imaging were conducting systematic sweeps. Her survival depended on skills that went far beyond marksmanship: wilderness navigation, cold weather survival, and the ability to remain undetected in terrain that offered minimal concealment. The helicopter pickup occurred at a remote landing zone near the Mongolian border, exactly as planned, despite the extensive search operations that had attempted to locate and eliminate the sniper who'd killed one of the world's most dangerous arms dealers. As they lifted off from Siberia, Kinsley looked down at the vast wilderness where Kozlov's network had been permanently disrupted. Intelligence materials recovered from Kozlov's compound revealed the scope of his operation: weapons sales that had provided advanced military technology to hostile nations, terrorist organizations, and criminal cartels throughout Asia and the Middle East. His elimination had prevented these technologies from reaching their intended destinations and disrupted years of planning for attacks that would have killed thousands of people. The debriefing at Langley was more extensive than previous missions, reflecting the strategic importance of Kozlov's elimination and the intelligence recovered from his operation. The mission had demonstrated that even the most remote and well-defended facilities couldn't protect arms dealers from American determination and precision. Kozlov's network spanned 3 continents and involved clients who posed direct threats to American allies throughout Asia, Colonel Mitchell explained during the debrief. His elimination has prevented the transfer of advanced military technologies that could have fundamentally altered the balance of power in several regional conflicts. Agent Torres added, "More importantly, the intelligence we've recovered reveals similar operations being conducted by other rogue military personnel. This gives us targets for future missions that could prevent even more dangerous weapons from reaching hostile hands." Kinsley's performance in Siberian conditions had demonstrated capabilities that impressed even seasoned special operations professionals. Operating alone in one of Earth's most hostile environments while conducting precision shooting at extreme range represented the pinnacle of individual military capability. "Your performance in Siberia was exceptional," Mitchell observed. "Operating in those conditions while maintaining the precision necessary for target elimination at nearly 2 kilometers distance represents skills that few people in the world possess." But Kinsley's success had also attracted attention from intelligence agencies that wanted to understand how a diplomatic courier was consistently eliminating high-value targets that conventional military operations couldn't reach. Questions were being asked about her methods, her access to classified information, and the legal authorities that allowed her to operate with such effectiveness. "There are concerns within the intelligence community about operational security," Torres explained carefully. "Your success rate is generating interest from agencies that want to understand your methods and potentially recruit personnel with similar capabilities." Mitchell leaned forward. "We need to discuss whether your current operational profile remains sustainable or whether changes are necessary to maintain your effectiveness while protecting the program that enables your missions." The conversation that followed would determine whether Kinsley continued operating as a covert diplomatic operative or transitioned to a more traditional role within the intelligence community. Her success had made her valuable, but it had also made her visible to people who might not understand the unique nature of her capabilities. 5 years later, Kinsley Davis was still officially a diplomatic courier, carrying official pouches between American facilities throughout the world's most dangerous regions. But her real mission was protecting American lives by eliminating threats that conventional forces couldn't handle effectively. Her methods were precise, her targets carefully selected, and her results measurable in terms of attacks prevented, weapons shipments interdicted, and terrorist operations disrupted. She'd found her place, not as a traditional soldier or conventional diplomat, but as something more valuable than either. The Kozlov mission had established her reputation within the intelligence community as someone who could handle impossible assignments in the world's most challenging environments. Subsequent missions had taken her to every continent except Antarctica, eliminating arms dealers who thought geography could protect them from American justice. Each mission reinforced the same lesson. No location was too remote, no security was too comprehensive, and no target was too well protected when America's most dangerous enemies needed to be eliminated. Kinsley had become the solution to problems that conventional military and intelligence operations couldn't solve. She was the sniper who operated with diplomatic immunity, the courier who carried death in her luggage, the guardian who protected America by eliminating its enemies before they could strike. And in a world where threats could emerge from anywhere, that combination of legal authority and lethal capability was exactly what the situation required. Somewhere in remote corners of the world, arms dealers and terrorist facilitators continued their deadly work, believing distance and security could protect them from American justice. They had no idea that the quiet woman boarding commercial flights with diplomatic credentials might be carrying the means of their destruction in her official luggage. Sometimes the most effective weapons are the ones that travel with diplomatic immunity. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, you can subscribe to see more incredible stories like this one.